Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to today's special edition Advisicon Academy training on the new project for the web. This is the start of our Modern Project Monday series happening over the course of the next 4 weeks. My name is Mina Inquist, and I'm a marketing assistant here at Advisicon. We are a group of authors, teachers, consultants, and technologists offering training in Microsoft technologies and project management and methodology. With attending any of our training sessions, we offer PDUs as we are a registered education provider with the Project Management Institute. At the close of today's session, I will give some instructions on how to claim your PDUs and how to contact Advisicon for any questions you may have. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few things so you know how to participate in today's event. Please review the control panel that should be on the top right of your screen. The audience is muted during the session, so in order to ask questions, you will need to submit them in the questions window of the control panel. This webinar will be recorded and uploaded on the Advisicon YouTube channel for those who could not attend today's session live. Please note that any questions or comments submitted will not display in the recording, nor will any of your personal information be shared. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's instructor, Advisicon's President, Tim Runcie, who I will now hand this presentation over to.
Thanks, Mina. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you here today. This has been kind of a fun, been biting my nails for the last couple months, but not trying to say anything about the new modern version of Project. So very excited to kind of introduce this to you. And again, what's interesting about Modern Project is that we're going to see it weave across, SharePoint, Teams, Project, Power BI, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into today. But as you know, we've been doing it for a long time, and for those of you that are new, I encourage people to reach out anytime with questions. In fact, we're going to have, I believe, 4 sessions focused just on Modern Project because of some of the power and capabilities, as well as some of the differences in how to understand what the bake-offs between existing project, or what we call legacy project. So we'll talk about why is there a new version. I want to get in right away quickly into, how does it work? Let's get in and see a live demo. I'll show you everything that's there today, and then we'll talk about what's coming as it continues to be built upon, and then certainly get into a place where how do you get it, and then if there's time, I will take questions. But again, as you know, you can always reach out anytime to us here at Advisicon. Happy to ask kind of detailed questions around what you're looking for and help you figure out whether Modern Project's the right fit. So without further ado, let's jump in here. And we'll talk about why is there a new version of Project. In fact, in the upper left-hand corner of my screen here, you should see there's a new logo. In fact, we were talking about, if you like Tetris, Project's in, you can make it fit. And so, again, understanding where and why and what the purpose is actually pretty important to finding whether you're going to need this or whether you can continue using existing Project in terms of the legacy version along with Modern Project, or we call Project for the Web. So remember, there are 3 layers here. Remember, project, program, and portfolio management in the upper right quadrant is high level of complexity, able to do a lot of resource capacity planning. But most of the world lives in the work management or the task management space. And this is kind of where Microsoft To Do, Wunderlist, your checklist that you have in Outlook, if you have SharePoint task lists, there's kind of this wide open area. And Microsoft product team recognized that there was a gap in the marketplace. This is kind of important because as we think about what we need to do, it's not just for developers. So maybe you're doing what we call Azure DevOps. You've got Azure boards that you're working on. Might be simple tasks that you're managing. And again, the whole idea is that in Teams, you can actually see multiple portals. We'll talk about that as well today. But Planner was released as a stopgap measure. And I remember when Planner first came out, just kind of like we're talking about Modern Project, it was about, well, how does that work? I mean, how do I sell it? It's actually really easy. In fact, if you look at the numbers today, Planner has over 159 million users using it, where Project has 32 million users in terms of the licenses that are going on. So when we think about the gap in the marketplace, there's absolutely a need for leveraging better project management tools. Hence the release and the build from the ground up, the Microsoft Project tool. So as we get into understanding a little bit more around what is happening here, the whole concept behind this is that, first of all, Project for the Web, which is the new name for Project, some of us are calling it P4W, and looking at what we call Modern Project versus Legacy Project, they are actually running in parallel. But they took this tool and said, let's completely start over. Let's envision as if we did never had a version of project before. How do we make this work for today's mobile workforce? And this is important because if you know how Microsoft Project is built in Word and Excel and PowerPoint, these products have been around since basically the early 1990s. In fact, Microsoft Project, 1988, you have some of the initial DOS versions of Project that were built and put together. So all this legacy code has been kind of built on and built on and built on. So if you have an opportunity, sometimes it's nice to just kind of do a, well, I'll call it a fire sale, just clear the whole thing out, start over, build on the modern platform, and you're able to work with it. So the intent is collaboration, intelligent planning. It's got basically artificial intelligence behind the scenes where we can start learning and doing analytics. Power BI and other insight models are there. And then again, there are other tools we're going to be using, project scheduling engine, which is kind of helpful for them. But the idea is that leveraging Power Apps and Flow should be helpful. Now, we think in terms of how we want to make sure this is going to work in the future. You always have to go back and say, okay, if we've got a good version of project, how and why do we have more versions of it? And, hey, listen, if we're going to have both, we have to have a clear understanding of what that is going to be and what the details are. So as in more cowbell, sometimes more is better and sometimes more is less. And I think in this case, there's actually a significant gap that project is going to bring to the table for those who are both using current project online and possibly how this is going to fit and where we're working with. So let me put a couple pieces together here, and I should have turned off the transition, but let me kind of zip this through so you can see it a little bit better. The whole component that we have here in terms of the way that project is set up is, first of all, you go to a landing page called Project Home. Now, there's this new tool called Roadmap. We talked about it this last year, which is what is the purpose of Roadmap? And Roadmap can read and show pictures, it can show timeline, key milestone, key dates across multiple tenants, multiple versions of project. So they have this overarching ability to kind of communicate the big picture. Now, as you go under that, of course, Power BI sits there, and I'll show you Power BI, just a quick screenshot today. We're going to have more time in some of our future sessions to talk about Power BI, Flow, .NET, and other things that you can do with modern project or project for the web here. So on the left, we have this project for the web, which is really designed to continue to perpetuate the motion that the Microsoft Planner or Office 365 Planner folks are doing, but that they need a little bit more maturity or more rigor around that. But on the far right-hand side of the picture, notice there's an older picture of project there. Project Online is a very powerful legacy tool. In fact, even the desktop version of Microsoft Project we were able to use to run a Fortune 100 company and do major projects. So there's a lot of power here. But how do we bring these together? And that's really the story that we want to get into, is that using the technology stack to help rapidly pull things together should really provide you, the end user, a better experience. And now remember, not everybody wants to jump in. In fact, they wrestle with the heaviness of the existing legacy project. But looking at project for the web or modern project here, you're going to find that it is designed differently, it serves a purpose, and it may not necessarily be a perfect match for you. So I'm going to walk through some of that today to help you guys get into that. All right, less demo or less PowerPoint slides, let's actually see the tool. So first off, let me bring up my browser. And this is that home page we talked about, your landing site, your home page. Now for the legacy Microsoft Project or Project Online users, you'll notice down here at the bottom that we have Go to Project Web Apps. You can always drill right into your existing Project Online environment. But what's nice about this is almost like a mobile device. You can pin, you can set your favorite projects. Some of them can be roadmaps, or maybe you've got a strategic roadmap that you're mapping out. Could be key projects, but basically the project manager, you can actually see these. Now at the top here, you notice you can click on the drop-down arrow and generate a new roadmap. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually fire up a brand new project. So let's just take a look at it right from the gate here. So clicking on new project, and it spins for a second, and then it gives you this grid, board, or timeline. And notice as it loads here, it didn't ask me for a name, it didn't ask me for a start date, it didn't ask me for my budget was. It's just saying, hey, would you like to get going here? So if I want to click on my project, I can actually come up here and give it a name here. So let's just go ahead and call this Create Training Program. And it's asking, okay, well, you're the owner. I can see you're on this project. When do you want it to start? Well, you know what? Maybe we start this back one more day. And I can look at the finish, overall duration. And again, I can also choose from basically a default work template, meaning that I can actually have a calendar set up here, which is kind of nice. But that's it. Look at that. I mean, that literally is it. I just started this and I've got a title and a name here. Now I can just as quickly create it. I can also remove it. Didn't have to call an admin to do this. So let me close my window here. And as I'm looking at my project, I might decide that I want to come in here and let's just add a few tasks here. So what we first do maybe under a training program is we review market needs, hit enter, and then I'm going to define skill sets needed, review existing tools, and I'm just typing and hitting the enter key, and I'm creating in this grid view. Now notice here, I've got a few columns, right? I can actually go through here and say, well, there's my ID number. And you have these little tiny tools that allow you to grab them. You can move these around if you need to prioritize. You can actually copy. But the minute I start putting these together, I can actually come in and say, well, let's insert a task. I can mark it complete. We'll talk about dependencies here in a moment. But our ability to actually come in between row 1 and row 2, oh, look, it knows that row 2 can actually become a subtask. And so I can kind of promote or demote these. Now, I haven't built a team yet. I didn't go in and draw from a global resource pool. So if I want to create a resource pool, I might want to start reaching out to some folks here. So let's go ahead and just put in, let's just put in Leslie. And I'll just start typing here. And it says, I recognize Leslie. She's part of our group. And as soon as I do this, it's going to come up here and say, hey, listen, would you like to create a security group? Now, let's pause for just a moment. This is built on the new security model that Microsoft Teams uses. Basically, it uses security groups, which are very easy, quick to manage. You can control them. In fact, I'll go into a little bit more detail on this, not only on this session, but also a little bit later here. So I'm looking at a private group. I can come in here, get into a little details and say, well, no, I'm going to make this discoverable. So just like I was setting up either a SharePoint page or a team, I can actually expose and make this available where other people can find it, or I can create a private group. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and create this. It's simply the same name as my title, certainly if you give it something different. Or I can click up here and begin adding people to the group. So I can get groups. I can pull groups within groups. So I don't have to add everybody in independently, but the idea is now I can come in here and say, all right, let's add some people. So let's see, we want to add Leslie. Oh, here she is. And yep, let's go ahead and create and assign her to this group. And default skill needs here, let's go ahead and put me. It better give me some work. I try not to take any work if I can help it. And it'll just keep kicking down here as I start selecting. So if I want Rich, let's go ahead and pull Rich in here. It recognized within my domain. Oh, you want to add him to this group? Absolutely. And as you go through here, you can continue to either add a full group with everyone already there, or you can type them one at a time. Now, when you know anything about Teams and how you can invite people externally, you do have options to bring and share and bring other people in. But right now, I'm going to pull from my internal group here. So let's put Ken on this. And there we go. And we'll just continue to add a few people. All right, so I've got some assignments. I can mix and match here, and I can continue to add these. Notice it's not prompting me for anything like, well, what's your duration? And if I click in the duration column here, watch this, I don't know. Hit enter. It says, well, hold on a second. Now we're in a very simple mode here. The duration field, I'm going to need something, but I don't have to have a duration. I don't have to have a start date. So if I just come in here and say 3 days, 4 days, that's 5 weeks, I can put these in place. I can even add columns. And what's nice about this is that as I'm still working in the grid, just kind of brainstorming or reviewing the information, is I can actually create a series of predefined columns. You notice here, you've got a series of columns. If we total these up, you got 11 columns, and that's it. It's really simple. The idea is that you can quickly get in. You have the basic elements that 80% of people who build project schedules can actually work with. So if I want to track in, hey, what bucket is this? I've got a to-do bucket. And a little while later, I'll talk about buckets and how we could change these. But I can come in and say, well, what about adding work? Notice work doesn't exist. There's now called effort. You also talk about predecessor successors. Doesn't exist in the vernacular of the world that doesn't necessarily do formal project management. So when you say dependence, it says, oh, this is after or depends on, is that there's a whole new phraseology. And the intent is to help people really understand, you can get in here quickly, you can manage these, you can type in your own numbers. And so if I want to play with some of these, I can actually work in here. But I got a grid view. I'm not confused with the Gantt chart. I have simple columns, and I can kind of manage my view. So as I start off, I might have a very large project schedule. In fact, notice here I can come in to this pre-built one where I'll beat up in a little bit here, where I can just actually come in and type in my percent complete. Well, I'm 37% done. Type it in and see I've got my grid working for me. So if I go back to this brand new program, it's not just one here, but you also have something called a planning board. And this is where I can come in, and for those of you that are used to working in, say, Planner, is I can create buckets where I can manage these. In fact, if I come in here, I can simply group by progress or group by finish date, or I can group by bucket itself, and I can add my buckets. So I might be an agilist where I might come in and say, hey, this is my planning sprint. So we're going to do some planning. And then I'm going to have 3 sprints in here that I'm going to actually make sure stuff gets done. My sprints are 4 weeks or 3 weeks or 2 weeks, but I can just type them in. Didn't like what I typed, I can go back and edit that. And I'm literally on the fly building these without having to go and actually make a security group, go and put a drop-down list, add something to a lookup table. I am literally just allowing my end users to come in here and work with this. And now what I can do is I can take and drag these, move them around. Notice that here's my to-do list. I can manage those and work with that. So if I go back to my grid, remember where I add the bucket? Well, here they are. They're all getting updated as I'm working. So again, that one version of the truth, having information. Again, the intent is to quickly get up, running, and using it without needing an enterprise environment setup or configuration. Now, again, with the agileness of this tool, we can also roll in and play around with sometimes how we develop those relationships. And what's nice about this is not going to have a desktop tool. This is not going to have a desktop client where you install it or open it. You work 100% from the cloud. And so when I come up here and go, I think it's a little bit longer, but maybe it's going to start next week, and I'll push that forward. There we go. And I need to link these together. I'll just put my mouse pointer right on that little dot, and I'll just kind of tell it exactly what I want to link to. So you can touch these, you can move them around. Notice it's not prompting me with a constraint. I'll just quit clicking here because it moves really fast. But if I come in here and say, yeah, let's just tie it, I put the dot right on the dot, picks up and move. I said 4 weeks, but that's a lapse duration. Maybe we can shorten that if I put a couple people on it. Let's link these pieces together, and we can kind of play with these. And notice I am building a schedule. I can do this with a touchpad. I can do it with a mobile device. And all of this allows me to just kind of work or manage it directly in a view, whether it's a Kanban board where I actually have my planning boards, or I have a timeline, so I can manage these. And I can edit them anytime. Come in here, continue to add new tasks. So we'll review existing. Let's go ahead and build training plan. Here we go. And we'll just say planning complete, right? And so as I begin typing or working on these, if I click on any one of them, I can open up the details. I'll even talk about inserting or modifying these. And what's kind of fun about this, let's show you something here. If you have your audio turned on, when you mark a task complete, you literally click on it. It has this sonic alert, which actually sounds like a little ding. And I was playing around with this the other day, and I said, oh, how nice. It's like an angel gets its wings every time you mark something complete. But the idea is, from a planning area, is that this data is being stored, it's being tracked, and we can report on it. But inherently, I can quickly manage or update these just as easily as if I was working in a lightweight tool. In fact, that's what Project will be. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to stay this way. This is just the beginning of the growth of this particular tool. But as we begin setting and modifying kind of our views here, we've got some great flexibility in terms of how we manage this. Now, let me show you a couple other pieces you may not have seen before. So while I'm working with our grid, where I may want to come back and play with my details, or I want to add a column, say I want to add my percent complete, and I don't want my percent complete there. I may want to just drag or move these around. You'll notice that you can come in here. It's really up to you to manage, hide it, add it, work with it. You have that flexibility to kind of play with your information. You can increase the width. Again, it's a kind of like an Excel-esque overall detail where you can work and manage. And then I can come in here, and while I'm looking at this and say, hey, listen, let's take a look at this overall group. In fact, you know what I want to do? I want to see more information about this. So remember, because we are dealing with a security group, we actually have behind the scenes our ability to come in and actually look at emails. You can actually have people send emails to that group, just like you were doing with a Teams group, is that you can come in. So whether I'm looking at users or I'm going to come in here, let's just go ahead and pick groups. And I've got my training plan. Let's go ahead and click on that for just a moment. Let's see, scroll down here. And there it is. I can come in here and look at this. Here's my about page. I can see the members. I can manage this. I can load files. In fact, you actually get a SharePoint site with this. In fact, if you look down here, you can look at files. You can kick up a planner board on top of this. So you're not necessarily losing some of the things that you've had before in other areas. We just now have the ability to create connected schedules with tasks, but not necessarily the heaviness of our older legacy project. And if you want to jump out to your SharePoint site, simply click on it. And now we can actually look at documents or notes or comments or things that we have inside of here. So you have this rich environment that allows you to kind of create your pages. You have your OneNote notebook. But again, notice I didn't have to publish. I didn't save. I didn't check it in. I didn't check it out. I just turned it on and started using this. So let's kind of go back to the one that I've kind of built out a little bit here where we've got a few more tasks. So I can create phases. I can promote. I can demote the details that we have here. And as we continue, I've got this nice opportunity for us to continue to shift and modify in a lightweight or an agile environment where I can organize my buckets. I can make sure things are done. A lot of times I'll put in my backlog, or I have my to-do list. I might have sprints, or I have priority, things that need to be worked on. Again, doesn't necessarily disconnect from the timeline, but I have things that are in place. We can manage that. Here's my done column. So when I mark something done, it's really done. And usually, is it done or is it done? Done. So as you work in the environment of having project task details, when I go to my grid, some questions surface up, which is, hey, you're building this, but if you add resources or hours, what kind of task structure is this? And by default, for those of you that have used Microsoft Project, the professional or what I call legacy, is all the tasks here are basically effort driven. And as you put them in here, its default is fixed units, effort driven. And so if you're thinking about that and you're kind of applying this, it'll help you understand a little bit more of how the hours are calculated when you add or take away resources. But by the way, that's the default that's in Microsoft Project. Some people may not even care about much of this. They just want to make sure things are getting done and they can work from the view themselves. And while I'm here, I'm going to wrap up with a couple quick things and then I'll just go over some high-level overview. But remember, you can also go in and you can create Power BI reports. So if you look right here, here's a report pack that's actually looking at basically modern project, or we call project for the web. This project for the web environment, different than your existing project, but yet I can actually see what's going on, what are my tasks, how am I pulling these in here. I can see the different projects, and I could go in and look at a timeline for these. So again, you have some great things, and if you're turning these on, and for example, you don't have the Power BI reports, I recommend just reaching out. We can help you get connected and answer that. But there's a lot of elements that say, not only are we looking at one side of project, we can look at the other, whether it's resources in a dashboard or assignments, but I'm not disconnected from the reporting mechanisms that exist. Again, I'll be covering this in a much more detailed session here, but you've got availability. And of course, if you're using Teams, let me just bring over my Teams window here, you can actually create or embed your own reports, not just Power BI. What I'm showing you right here is actually a .NET app created against this, where I can actually add my own custom fields, manage them, modify them, I can report to them, but I've got visibility to look, track, and filter, whether I create a team dashboard or perhaps I want to drill into a project dashboard and just kind of refresh the information and say, what do I have available? I've got details that I can work with. So as I load this up here, let me just click on that project dashboard. I can select one or multiple projects. We'll just wait for it to load. Almost there. There we go. And let's go ahead and pick just which project I want to drill into. I want to see the details for this. So I have total task count. I have the entire platform of work, effort. I can actually merge either project online data with modern project or project for the web. I can also look at a personal dashboard where I can come in here and I can say, you know what, I just want to know how many are late or how many are completed. So again, the idea is that because we're on this new CDS 2.0 platform, Dynamics is using Project. Project has this new tool basically designed to be easy to work with and easy to get in and manage. And for us, that has been a great stopping point where we have struggled with organizations who haven't been able to pull those details in or say, hey, look, and I'll just stick with Excel, or I'm stuck over in Planner, but we can't read that data into something that we would consider as actually a real project. So from an example of where do I get and how do I get Project, let me talk about this because a lot of people are asking. Number one, if you're already using Project Online, you have this. It is turned on in your tenant. If you're using Dynamics or Project Service Automation, you will actually have this as well. It's actually part of the scheduling tool that's available. So Project for the Web is embedded completely inside of that. If you're talking to your Office 365 administrator, and again, these numbers are, I think, retail numbers. I just grabbed a quick screenshot off of Microsoft's site here. But the idea, it's called Plan 1. So we're going to hear something called Plan 1, Plan 3, and Plan 5. And those are different types of roles around both existing legacy project, which is Project Professional for Office 365 and Premium. But Plan 1 is the one you want to look into and find out where that is. So a lot of people actually have this. They don't know about it. They just need to be able to turn that on and take advantage of those pieces. Now, if you think about that for a moment, Project is enabled, it's available, and if you don't have Project, you're going to be looking for an Office 365 subscription, but you're going to want to look on turning on what's called Plan 1, and that will turn on your modern project. So let's just quickly summarize here what we've seen is that this is the beginning and the future of MS Project. Let me talk about that for a moment. So what we have today is we have this extremely powerful Project Online that does portfolio management, does demand and capacity planning. It has all the bells and whistles for earned value. In fact, I can bring up either rich desktop and go, yeah, hey, there's my timeline view, and I've got red, yellow, green indicators, and then I can certainly jump into a Project Online and publish this. Well, that's going to be around for a very long time. It's not going to suddenly disappear overnight. But when we think about adding this lightweight tool, which allows us to jump in and create a good visual, simple to work with, these are running in parallel. And the intent is to provide the end user the ability to actually start the pendulum of doing better project management, better use with a work, task, and resource management tool. Notice I didn't say cost management, but as I work with any one of these, I can go in, I can bring up the details, I can actually look, I can visualize these, and something that I was very pleased with that's added here is you can actually come in and put in notes. So if I want to add some comments here, like, hey, plan key deliverables, make sure that I get my deliverables in here, and it's at www.despair.com, if I can spell that right, yep. So I could put web links, I can put URLs in here, I can also make sure that I have enough information, and as this will continue to grow, we're going to see more and more power invested into Project for the Web, or what I call, a modern project. This is going to continue to exceed and grow its capacity. We'll have more and more elements added, and at some point down in the very, very distant future, we're talking many years out. When I say many years, it should be in a position to either replace existing project because it has that competency, but at the same time, the intent is to make this as easy as possible for end users who perhaps don't have that level of rigor or project management training to get in and actually do good visuals, good management, and task and work pieces together. So it works in conjunction. They work in parallel. Right now, you can have one or the other. You can have both. You can create Power BI that brings them both together. So you might have some of your organization working in this lightweight tool while other parts are in the formal process. But the idea is that we can begin to get visibility to the demand in the organization and begin teaching people the importance of creating a connected system, not just Kanban targets or cards, but I have information. So upcoming, we have a few more sessions where I'm going to get into when and where to use both, and I'll do a comparative analysis. We'll talk about Project for the Web and other tools and how they work together. So we'll drill deeper into the Power BI, the Teams approach, which is a very hot commodity. And then we have a special session, which is really understand how to make it work. And if you do need to turn on licensing or you need to make that work in your organization, how do you do role-based security permissions for the web? Again, as always, you can certainly ask us for questions or a private demo for your group. We're pretty excited about it, and I hope that you can start using this as well. So definitely reach out, send me an email, or if you want to just have a couple questions, that's something that's we're very happy to do. Again, as an evangelist for technology in the project, program, and portfolio space, we want to welcome Modern Project, or as they call it, Project for the Web, right to the new family, and hopefully this will continue to give you more tools that empowers you and your organization to work well. With that, let me turn it back over to Mina and our marketing team.
All right, Tim, just before you leave, we do have one question. It's very quick, and it's about sprints. It's just,
Love questions. Go ahead.
can items be shown in sprints based on the date of action / completion, or are the buckets just text labels?
So you can, let me actually pop back in here. So if I understand the question is, as you come in here, can you, now go ahead and read the last part of it there. They're asking about the buckets. Go ahead.
Or are the buckets just text labels?
Well, repeat. I know I got the last part
Okay.
there. Read the first
Can
part.
items be shown in sprints based on the date of action / completion, or are the buckets just text labels?
For example, I want to filter this out and just say, hey, I only want to visualize only sprint one, or I want to do that. Now, short answer is in the native view here, these are just text labels, right? You're going to see some other elements that you can filter, but in the Power BI view, which actually has the same data, I can come in here and I can actually filter by any one of these. So literally you can have a tab that just says, hey, I want to see a report. I want to break it down by a sprint or by bucket label. So you can actually click and filter. You can add date ranges to those as well. So that's part of why this sits on top of the Power BI stack. So not a perfect answer in terms of, hey, it's native. Yeah, you can slice and dice just any way that you have. This is brand new. I mean, we're talking the paint's still wet. The leather smell, the new leather smell is there. When you get into this car and you want to take it out for a drive, literally in the last week, this is just when they've turned it on. But like I said, you're going to see a few more things appearing here. So what you'll find in Planner is a good indication of what you're also going to see rolled into the capabilities. But don't forget that you also can set this up in a Power BI environment where you can actually touch or click and visualize any one of those based upon what you want to select or what you want to see. Great question. Okay, Mina, back to you.
All right. Thank you everyone for attending today's webinar. We welcome your questions and feedback. For more information, you can email us at contact@advisicon.com. You will receive a notification about the other sessions that are occurring for Modern Project Monday. Once you exit today's webinar, you will receive a survey on the presentation. You will need to complete and submit the survey to receive your PDUs. From there, you will receive a follow-up email within 2 business days with your PDU information. On behalf of Advisicon, Tim, and myself, thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you participate in future webinars. Have a great day, everyone.